I swear the world was ending when they wheeled her into the ICU. My daughter, my little Daisy, just 6 years old, strapped up to more wires than I could count, her small body barely visible under tubes and beeping machines that sounded like alarms screaming in my brain. 1 minute we'd been on the road singing along to Taylor Swift, Daisy's voice all giggles and off-key sweetness. The next, an SUV had slammed straight through a red light, crushing the side of my car and her tiny frame along with it. I hadn't even seen it coming. I hadn't even had time to scream. Now her hair was matted with blood, a small teddy bear clutched in her hand, its stuffing peeking out like a wound. I sat there in the sterile hospital chair, numb, shaking, praying to a God I wasn't even sure I believed in, begging him to please let her wake up. That's when my phone buzzed. A text.
Mom.
I thought maybe she'd ask about Daisy. Maybe she'd say she was coming.
But no.
Bring cupcakes for your niece's school party tomorrow. I reread it 3 times. Maybe I was hallucinating. My fingers moved stiffly, bones like ice. Mom, I can't. I'm in the hospital with Daisy. She's on life support. Another buzz. Mom again. So casual it made my heart break in a fresh, new way. You always ruin everything with your selfish drama.
Drama?
My baby was fighting for her life. Then my sister chimed in. Stop being so dramatic. Kids get hurt all the time. It felt like someone plunged a knife straight through my chest. Then Dad, his words the worst of all. Your niece's party is more important than your attention-seeking. We're all tired of you. I couldn't even breathe. I looked up from those texts, back at Daisy's still, fragile body. They didn't see her. They didn't see me. They never had. They only saw what I could do for them, the errands, the emotional sponge, the second-hand mother to everyone's kids. My phone buzzed again, but before I could read it, the door to Daisy's room opened. The doctor stepped in, face solemn, voice grave. Your mom, he began. My world, already falling apart, somehow found a new way to break. The doctor stepped closer, shutting the glass door behind him, the monitor's soft beeping the only thing keeping me from screaming in that dead silence. His eyes darted to my phone, still glowing with Dad's hateful message, then back to me with a gentleness that almost felt like mercy. Your mom just arrived in the waiting room, he said carefully. She demanded to speak with you. I almost laughed, a hard, ragged, humorless sound that scraped my raw throat. Demanded? Of course she had. It was always about what she demanded. Is Daisy stable? I asked, voice shaking so badly I could barely form the words. He nodded.
For now.
We'll watch her all night. I closed my eyes in relief, even if it was the smallest sliver of peace in an ocean of terror. Then I stood, every muscle screaming in protest, and walked out of the ICU toward the family waiting area. And there she was. My mother, in her designer coat, hair done up like she was going to a brunch, tapping her foot on the floor. No tears. No fear. Nothing in her face but a pinched impatience, like I'd been late to a PTA meeting. When she saw me, her mouth twisted, that familiar disgust I'd grown up learning to recognize.
There you are, she snapped.
Did you hear what I texted you? I was so stunned I couldn't even answer. The world felt off balance, the floor tilting beneath me. Mom, I finally whispered, Daisy is on life support. She might die. She didn't even flinch, didn't even blink. And your niece has a class party tomorrow. She shot back, her tone scolding like I'd forgotten to do my chores. If you don't show up with those cupcakes, you will humiliate this family. I swear something in me broke right then. Something fragile and stupid and loyal that had kept me tethered to them all these years. Before I could speak, my sister stepped around the corner, arms crossed, rolling her eyes like a bored teenager. God, can you not make everything about you for once? She spat. Kids get banged up every day. Daisy will be fine. But what about Madison's party? You promised you'd help. I looked between the two of them, my mother and my sister, these women who should have been my family, my protectors, my support. All they saw was a free babysitter who'd failed their perfect script. And in that moment, everything changed for me. Because as much as I was terrified to lose Daisy, I realized I had already lost them. And maybe that was the best thing that could have happened. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the chair beside me to stay upright. They stood there, my mother, her lips pressed into a thin line of scorn, and my sister, checking her phone as if this was the most boring argument in the world, and I felt something inside me turn to stone. "You want me to bake cupcakes?" I repeated slowly, while my daughter is fighting for her life. Mom's jaw twitched, a tiny flicker of annoyance, the only crack in her perfectly put-together armor. "Daisy will be fine," she snapped. "You always exaggerate these things. You love the drama. Madison's party is important. She deserves a normal day." Normal? As if Daisy nearly dying was a slight inconvenience. As if her granddaughter, lying unconscious with tubes down her throat, was just some minor annoyance in their social schedule. "Mom," I said, voice so low it barely scraped past my lips, "I am not bringing cupcakes. I am not leaving this hospital." My sister scoffed, loud enough that heads turned from across the waiting area. "There you go again, making everything about you. Why can't you just help? You're so selfish."
Selfish.
That word crashed through me, like glass shattering against my ribs. I had been their everything since I was old enough to walk. Babysitter.
Peacekeeper.
Backup mom to everyone's kids. Free therapist to everyone's meltdowns. And now, even with my own baby clinging to life, they still saw me as nothing more than the help.
No.
"I'm done," I said, hearing the finality in my own voice. "I'm done." Mom's eyes went wide, like a child being denied a toy for the first time in her life. "What does that mean?" she hissed. I looked her right in the eye, a calm settling into my bones. "It means I'm not your convenience anymore. I'm not your stand-in mother, or your maid, or your bank. I'm Daisy's mom. And she comes first." Mom's lips trembled, fury boiling up behind her eyes. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I laughed then, raw and hollow. "Everything you've done for me?" Like a slideshow, my mind flashed with every time they left me to fend for myself. Every time they dumped their kids on me. Every time they told me I was worthless unless I was of use to them. "You have done nothing for me," I said. "And you will never use me again." And before they could spit more poison at me, I turned and walked back into Daisy's room, letting the door swing shut behind me with the finality of 1,000 slammed doors. I chose my daughter. I chose me. And I had no regrets. The beeping of Daisy's monitors was steady, like a heartbeat I was borrowing to keep myself grounded. I stepped back to her bedside, trying to steady my hands as I brushed a loose wisp of hair away from her forehead. Her skin was so pale, it barely looked real. I pulled the tiny teddy bear from where it had slipped under the blankets, tucking it back into her arm. My mind wouldn't stop replaying their words.
Selfish.
Drama queen. Ruining everything.
No.
I looked down at Daisy, this perfect little girl who had done nothing wrong except trust me to protect her, and I knew exactly what I was fighting for. Her. And myself. I sank into the plastic chair, breathing slowly, as a nurse stepped in to check Daisy's lines. The nurse, a soft-spoken woman named Nia, touched my shoulder with real compassion, the kind of care I'd begged for my whole life but never found in my own family. "She's holding steady," Nia said gently. "We're giving her everything we can." I nodded, blinking back tears. "Thank you," I whispered. She hesitated, as if she wanted to say more, then leaned in closer. "Family is tough," she murmured. I heard part of what was happening outside. "Please don't let them shake you." I felt something hot behind my eyes, gratitude so sharp it hurt. "Thank you," I repeated, voice cracking. When she left, I sat there alone, breathing in Daisy's soft, rhythmic machine-assisted breaths. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through their messages again. "Your sister is devastated you won't help. You're so cruel. Madison's teacher already asked if you're bringing the cupcakes."
Cupcakes.
Like sugar and sprinkles could ever outweigh a child fighting to live. I closed my eyes and made a choice right there that I should have made years ago. I blocked their numbers. Every single one.
Dad. Mom.
My sister. One by one, their digital chains disappeared. For the first time in my life, their constant, buzzing expectations went quiet. Daisy let out the tiniest sigh in her sleep, and it felt like a miracle, like the world giving me a sign. I reached for her tiny hand, careful of the tubes. "I'm here," I whispered. "I will always be here for you. And only you." That was all that mattered. That was all that would ever matter. Because they might have lost me forever, but my daughter would never have to question that I chose her, no matter what. The night stretched on in that endless, fluorescent-lit haze only hospitals seem to know. I barely moved, eyes fixed on Daisy's chest rising and falling with the ventilator, each precious breath a prayer. Around 3 a.m., I stood to stretch, my spine aching, mind raw from hours replaying every second of the accident, every panicked text from my so-called family. But when I checked my phone, it was blissfully silent. I'd blocked them all. And it was like the air itself had changed, somehow easier to breathe without their endless demands crowding my lungs. I stepped out to the vending machine and got a bottle of water, trying to ignore the guilt that kept trying to creep back in. That voice they'd trained into me my whole life. "You're selfish. You're ungrateful. You ruin everything." But I wasn't selfish. I wasn't dramatic. I was a mother fighting for her child. And that was stronger than any guilt they could throw at me. When I came back into the room, the nurse was adjusting Daisy's monitors. "Stable so far," she reassured me, smiling kindly. I nodded, swallowing the tears again. I sat, reached for Daisy's tiny hand, and held it gently. That's when the social worker came in, polite and hesitant, holding a clipboard. "Miss Martin," she asked softly. I straightened, ready for another blow, another problem. "Your parents and sister have been demanding to see Daisy," she explained carefully. "They've been quite loud in the lobby. We wanted to check with you before allowing them back." A bolt of cold certainty went through me. "No," I said immediately. "They are not allowed in here. My daughter doesn't need their stress." She nodded. Understood. But I saw the question in her eyes, the curiosity, the quiet why. Behind her professional calm, I sighed, my voice trembling. "They don't believe she matters. They wanted me to bake cupcakes for another kid's party while my daughter is on life support." The social worker's face fell, stunned and appalled. "Oh," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I nodded, too tired to keep explaining. "Please keep them away," I repeated. She made a note, then squeezed my shoulder gently. "I will. You focus on Daisy." As she left, I turned back to my little girl, whose fingers twitched ever so slightly in my palm, like she was fighting her way back to me even now. "We're okay," I promised her, a new, fierce resolve blooming in my chest. "We don't need them. We never did." And for the first time since the accident, I actually believed it. By morning, the sun broke through the hospital windows, painting everything in a pale, washed-out light. I hadn't slept, but I felt clearer than I had in years. My mom's final words echoed in my head like a curse. "You always ruin everything with your selfish drama." And my sisters. "Kids get hurt all the time." My father, the worst of them all. "Your niece's party is more important than your attention-seeking." It was like their voices had been tattooed on my soul since childhood, and this was the first time I was tearing them off. Daisy stirred a little, her eyelids fluttering, her tiny lips parting in a half-dream. I leaned forward so fast my chair nearly tipped. "Baby," I whispered, praying. "Mama's here." She didn't open her eyes, but the heart monitor picked up a stronger rhythm. I clung to that, letting it flood through me like oxygen. "Stay with me," I begged in my head. "I will fight for you. I will protect you from everyone, even them." There was a knock at the door, cautious. Nia, the nurse, poked her head in with a gentle smile. "I told security not to let your family back," she said softly. They were furious, but they left. A shaky relief passed through me. "Thank you," I breathed. She came closer, adjusting Daisy's fore, then gave me a sad, searching look. "Families can be," she started, choosing her words carefully, "complicated. I laughed, the sound too harsh for a hospital room. That's one word for it. She hesitated, then surprised me. My mom was the same, she confessed. It took me a long time to draw the line. I felt something uncoil in my chest. It was the first time I'd heard someone understand. It feels wrong, doesn't it? I asked. Choosing your own kid over them? Her eyes softened with real empathy. It only feels wrong because they trained you to believe it was. I swallowed hard, tears stinging. They trained me so well. Nia squeezed my hand. They trained you, but you can retrain yourself. For her. I looked at Daisy, her tiny face finally peaceful, the machines keeping time for her heart. For her.
Yes.
Every boundary I set, every door I slammed shut, every time I said no, it was for Daisy. So she'd grow up knowing she was enough, that she was safe, that her mother would choose her every single time. Nia left, and I leaned over my daughter, brushing my lips against her temple. You're going to have a better life than I did, I whispered. I promise. And I meant it with every cell of my being. The day crawled by, hours marked only by nurses checking vitals and the dull ache in my back from sitting so long in that hard plastic chair. I refused to leave Daisy's side. Every time her monitor beeped a little off rhythm, my breath caught like a trap in my chest. I prayed to every god, every spirit, every scrap of hope that she'd pull through. When visiting hours opened again, I braced myself for another scene, half expecting my parents to come storming in past security. But they didn't. Instead, my phone lit up with a string of voicemails, their words sharp even through the screen. How dare you block us? You've embarrassed this entire family. You're making a spectacle again. A spectacle. As if me holding my baby's hand while she fought to live was some kind of theater. I scrolled through each message, numb. It felt almost like reading a script I'd heard 1,000 times, the same recycled insults dressed up in new panic. And with every line, I felt stronger. Because they no longer had a hold on me. I could choose Daisy over them, and no one could stop me. The doctor came in mid-afternoon, a soft knock before he entered. His face was careful, professional, but there was a glimmer of something gentler in his eyes this time. Ms. Martin, he said, Daisy is showing signs of breathing on her own. We may be able to start weaning her off the ventilator tonight. My knees nearly buckled. She's getting better? I choked. He nodded, with the faintest hint of a smile. She's a fighter, your daughter. I sank back into my chair, sobbing, but they were tears of relief this time, not terror. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against Daisy's tiny shoulder, and let the tears soak into the blanket. You're so strong, I whispered. I'm so proud of you. She was teaching me what strength really looked like, what surviving meant. Not bending, not apologizing for existing, not performing someone else's script. Living, breathing, fighting back. As the doctor left, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the window. My face was tired, drawn, but I saw a spark I hadn't recognized in years. A woman who would burn the entire world down to protect her child. And I would. No matter how many voicemails they left. No matter what lies they spread about me. No matter who tried to tell me I was wrong. They could keep their parties and their polite facades. I would keep Daisy. I would keep my peace. And I wouldn't trade that for all the cupcakes and fake apologies in the universe. Night fell again, casting long blue shadows across the hospital floor. Daisy's breathing had grown stronger, the ventilator's settings lowered, her own small lungs taking on more of the work. The nurse explained it to me gently, a hopeful note in her voice. She's fighting her way back, she said, adjusting Daisy's oxygen line with the same tenderness I wished my family had ever shown me. I nodded, voice gone from crying so many tears, my shoulders finally letting go of some of their tension. Because this was all that mattered. I took Daisy's tiny hand in mine and thought back over everything. Every birthday they'd overshadowed. Every time they called me dramatic for showing emotion. Every time they demanded I parent their children while they lived their picture-perfect lives. Every time I'd sacrificed a piece of myself to keep their fragile illusions intact. No more. The messages still came, though less frequently now, each one a final claw at my resolve. We'll never forgive you. You chose wrong. You've abandoned us. But they were wrong. I hadn't abandoned anyone. I had chosen the only person who ever truly needed me, who loved me without strings, without expectation. I chose Daisy. The nurse stepped in quietly, lowering the lights for the night. You should rest, she urged kindly. We'll watch her. She's stable. But I shook my head, refusing to leave. I'd spent too many years stepping away from the people who needed me, trying to please the ones who never would. I'll stay, I told her. She'll see me here if she wakes up. The nurse smiled, something like respect shining in her eyes. Then we'll bring you a pillow, she offered. When she left, I curled up in the chair, Daisy's hand still in mine. Our fingers tangled like roots growing back together after being torn apart. My phone sat silent on the table, notifications turned off, the world beyond this room distant and unimportant. In the morning, Daisy's eyes fluttered open, bleary but bright, fighting her way to me with a tiny, hoarse voice. Mama? My heart shattered and healed all in one breath. I'm here, I whispered, leaning in, tears blurring everything. Mama's right here. And I would be for every day of her life. Because I had finally chosen what mattered. I had finally chosen us. And no one, not Mom, not Dad, not my sister, not the weight of their twisted expectations could ever take that away again. I kissed Daisy's forehead, breathing in the sweet, fragile, alive smell of her. This was what I'd fought for. This was why I'd burned every bridge and slammed every door. It wasn't selfish. It wasn't drama. It was love. Real love. And for the first time in my life, I felt free.